Welcome to a new YouTube video. What if I told you that you could build a complete payment system with subscriptions, one-time purchases, and automatic billing management in just a few hundred lines of Python code? Today I'm going to show you how you exactly build a production-ready Stripe integration with FastAPI that handles everything from checkout sessions to webhook processing. I will cover the complete Stripe and FastAPI project structure, subscription payments, one-time purchase handling, webhook security and event processing, custom billing portal integration, and database models for payment tracking. Structure is simple. Here I have a simple FastAPI project which uses the router approach. I have a payment router, the core router, and the authentication router, but we will just cover the payment router. Here you can see the default models that we need for this architecture. We have a plan to keep track of the Stripe plans with the full price, the full plan name, the full price name, the product ID for Stripe, the price ID for Stripe, and the price which we want to show in our application. We also have packages which I use as a name for one-time purchase packages, which just have the product name, the product ID, and the price ID. So let's jump into the first file which we need to cover. We have the different validators for the plan, for example, the product, the create checkout request, which will also cover, the subscriptions, and the credits. In the architecture, we need to implement an endpoint to get the products, to get the current subscription of a user, to get the available plans you can subscribe to cancel the subscription, to create a Stripe checkout session, to enter the payment details, the credit card details, or pay with PayPal, whatever. And this will then trigger the flow, which ends up in our webhook. We also have a separate endpoint for one-time sessions, for example, if they want to buy credits or whatever in our application. And finally, we have to create billing portal session, which is for the Stripe portal where they can view the subscription, cancel it, and view the billing history. So let's jump into the code that define our endpoints. Our endpoints are defined in the payments.py file, and we import all the necessary functions and dependencies. All right, so this is the first endpoint you saw, the products endpoint. We here get the filtered products from our database for either one-time payments or subscriptions. We can check out this function, which is stored in our service.py file. It's just, you can implement this much simpler if you want to, but this is just to filter between one-time and subscriptions. We go to Stripe and we check the prices for this product. We filtered out. So we have the products, we get the products from our Stripe, from the Stripe API, get the filter products, add the products to a set, and we go for each product and check if it's one-time or recurring, and if not matching prices, we just continue and ignore it. Then we can sort it to get the most recent price from Stripe, and we create product info of our product. We get the name, the description, if it's active, the images we attach to it, if it's live, when it's created, and the price is later added. So here we check, add the price details based on the type. If it's one time, we just add the simple price. And if it's recurring or subscription, we add the interval it's priced at, the currency, the unit amount, and the price ID. And then we return our filter products, which will then be returned to our endpoint or whoever makes the request. Then we have a get user subscription endpoint. First of all, we have a get user dependency, which is connected to the database, so we can get the current user. We decode the JWT token, and we get our user from the database with this method, which is just a simple dependency we are gonna use here. And we also pass the DB dependency. All right, so we get to the get subscription details. We get if the user doesn't have a subscription, we just return subscription none. Then we go to the Stripe API, retrieve the subscription with the selected keys we want to check from our, which we want to retrieve. So we filter the subscription and we get the product information of which plan they are subscribed and get that from the database and return it to the product. And if no product, we also return the subscription to none. And if we have a product, we can put it into a product dictionary, which we have here. This is our base model from Pydantic. And we just return that and format the current period start and the current period end, just so it's a timestamp, and we format this to a correct date field. And then we can return our subscription, which is also a pedantic base model. Here you can see the fields that we get returned. Okay, let's jump into the next endpoint to get plans. Here we can get all available plans, which is just we return all the plans from the database model and execute the query and return it from our endpoint. Here we have the cancel subscription endpoint, which I also showed you in the Swagger UI. We check if the user has a subscription, and if no active subscription, we return an exception. And if we have an subscription going, we can cancel it with the subscription ID from the user. And we just use the Stripe modify API to cancel at the period end if the user wants to end his subscription. Next up, we have the create checkout session. We get the user again to create a checkout session for him to check if he doesn't have an active subscription going. And we pass in the price and the product ID of what we want to subscribe to. So, and we can check again. Here we have our function in our services.py. Create a checkout session with the frontend URL, so we know where we have to redirect to, the database, the price ID we need for the checkout, and the user. We go in here. We check if the user has a Stripe customer ID already, or if they have a customer on the Stripe and not just on our end. We check if there's no customer. We use the customer API to create a customer with the user email, and we pass in the metadata of the user ID to keep in track with and sync with our system. So, and then we go into this function again. And here we can see how we create a checkout session. It's also a simple API. We use the session API. We create with our customer, the Stripe customer. We add our client reference ID. This is the one we use on our end. Then we have the success URL where we want to redirect to when the subscription is successfully finished, or where we want to redirect when it's cancelled. Then we can add payment methods. We have only added card for this example, but you can add multiple and check out the Stripe documentation which are available. PayPal, for example, is also a possibility. Then we set the mode, subscription, or if we want to one time, you need to use a different mode. Then we add the subscription data, how much trail period days they have where they are not billed. You can leave that if you want to charge directly and have no trial for them. And we again add the client reference ID also to the metadata just to have it there as well. And we allow promotion codes. You can cancel that out, but you can create promotion codes on the Stripe API to get discounts for the customer. And after that, we return the checkout session URL where they can go to. This is the URL, and this will bring them to the Stripe app where they can put in their credentials and pay for the product. Now, the next endpoint would be the one-time, which is quite similar. Just we use the different mode. We use the payment mode, which is for one-time payments, and we pass in the customer ID, and again, the same stuff, just for one-time payments, for credits, for example, or whatever you want to purchase on the application. Next, we have the webhook, which is the core or the most important part of the application. In the webhook, it's important that we handle all the different events. But before we do that, we need to construct a webhook event with where we pass in the raw body to construct the event and verify the signature and make sure this is an authenticated request to our webhook, which we can process. We also need the webhook secret for that, which you should set in your environment variables or somewhere secure. You get the webhook secret either from the Stripe website where you create an official webhook which you want to use in production, or you get the webhook secret from the Stripe CLI, which you can run locally in your command prompt to route the requests to the webhook locally without being in production and running it via the Stripe logic. Here again, we check if the webhook payload is valid, we check if the signature is valid, and if everything is true of that, we continue with the session and get the data object from it. And if there's no session, we return invalid session, can't process a session that doesn't exist. Then we try the different webhook events. These are the most important, but there are a lot more events you need to, you can think about, but those are the core ones that we need for this type of application. We first check if the checkout is completed. Then we jump into the handler for that. If the checkout is completed, we can get, if it's a subscription, we get the subscription the user subscribed to, and modify if the subscription is not active, that we want to cancel it at the end. But if we want to continue with the correct subscription, we update the user info on our end. We get the customer ID, the subscription ID, the status, the renew, and the next renew, which we store in our database. So we can track it locally without making requests to the API every single time. And then we check out, this is based on how you implement it, but we use a credit system. We get the plan ID, get the plan by the product ID, so we know which plan he's subscribed to. Yeah, and if you don't have a plan, we can return in this case. But this is so the user gets his plan assigned to him, and we can issue credits and stuff like that. And if it's just a payment, like if the user is making a single time payment, we don't have to do that much. We can just get the package and assign whatever we want to the user after we verify that he paid for the certain package we want to handle. Alright, now we go to the invoice paid. Here we use when the user pays again, so the payment is verified again for a subscription, for example. And here we can get also the plan and can do whatever logic we want based on that, what plan he subscribes to. We can send emails, we can assign credits monthly or whatever we want to do based on the plan he subscribed to. And the last one is if the payment failed, we could decide to send an email to the user to notify him that the payment failed, for example. But in this case, we just update the subscription data, so our end knows that his subscription is failed or not renewed, and we don't assign him credits in this case, for example, if we use a credit-based system. Alright, this is everything we need to know about the webhook. This is all really custom based on what you want to implement, but you can implement your own logic here. Next, we jump again into the payments endpoint, and here we have the last important endpoint, which is to create a billing portal session. This is where the user goes to cancel the subscription if we don't want to implement a separate button on our end or our front end where we want to implement this architecture, but we just jump into the create billing portal session, which is also an API from Stripe, which will return an URL. And so if we are on the billing portal, we click on the return button and then it will send us back to our application wherever we want to go. But we return the URL for the billing portal, and they can click on it if they can get redirected from a button, for example, and they will end on the billing portal where they can see what have they been billed, when have they been billed, when will the next billing happen, or also cancel their subscription. And this is pretty much everything you need for a payment system with FastAPI and Stripe. What I can also show you is the environment setup. What you're gonna need is the webhook secret, which I told you can get from the Stripe app or from the Stripe CLI, which you can run locally to map your webhook. You need a Stripe secret key and a Stripe public key, which you get when you create an application on Stripe and you want to manage it. But you make sure for production you use, not for development, you use test mode keys, so you don't expose them and test on production keys. You later launch your application and then you're going to get production keys, which you can use here. By the way, this is all part of a template I launched, which you can use, where you get all of this logic and support from my end if you want to, which has the authentication logic for Google signing and Google OAuth applications, for example, or other OAuth providers. You get background processing, and you can check out the product on this page. Like you can see, we feature FastAPI, Postgres, Redis, Docker, Stripe, Celery, and Alembic for migrations. And you get all of these features into the template integrated if you want to use it and get a quick start. You can see we have deep documentation of all the features in the system. You get also the documentation about the payment system if you want to read up on it and see how you can work it, implement it, and use for your own system. And it's much more deeper explained, so if you want to check that out, feel free to do so. And I also offer a package where I offer personal support for your projects. So if you want that, feel free to check it out.